This video is sponsored by Stream. Build high-quality, flexible chat experiences in your iOS app with the Stream SDK. Get started for free with the link in the description down below. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be learning about adding context menus to collection views. So what the heck is a context menu? Well, it's going to be what you see here when you tap and hold on a cell. You get this beautiful animation where the background is blurred. You can add action items, these options in this little menu thing you see down below. We'll talk about how to actually dynamically update this. You'll see if I hit favorite, it's now going to show remove favorite. Works in light mode, dark mode, really nice iconography here, the whole 9 yards. So if that sounds good, drop a like down below, get pumped, and let's open up Xcode and let's create some context menus. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started by opening up Xcode and creating a new project. We're gonna stick with the app template under iOS, and I'm gonna go ahead and call this project context menu in CollectionView, since that's what we are going to be building. Make sure your language, of course, is Swift, your interface is storyboard. Go ahead and continue, save the project wherever you'd like. And before we expand our Xcode window, I've also got a folder of images here on my desktop for today's example. You can grab anything from Google or whatever your app uses. We're gonna drag this into our assets on the left-hand side here. So let's go ahead and open up our assets file. And I'm simply going to drag the entirety of images in. It has, I believe, 6 images, 1 to 6, super creatively named. Let me go ahead and expand my Xcode window, and let's jump into our view controller, where we will be writing the majority of the code for today's video. I'm also going to change the simulator to a 12 Pro Max, and let's get into the weeds of writing some code. Now, before we can talk about the context menu bit, when you tap and hold on a collection view cell, we need to actually create said collection view. So I'm going to go through this fairly quickly, but basically we're going to set up a simple collection view, a image cell, so we can show the images that we have brought in, and then we're going to talk about that tap and hold piece. So right here, we're going to create a collection view with the anonymous closure pattern, I should say. It's going to be a UI collection view that takes in a frame and a layout. Layout, I'm going to go ahead and call layout, and we're going to declare it right up here. You can use any layout for your collection view. It has no bearing on the actual end results in terms of the context menu. We're going to use a flow layout since it is fairly straightforward to set up. I'm going to go ahead and say layouts dot, I believe it's called scroll direction, is going to be vertical, and we'll go ahead and use that layout. At the bottom here, we want to go ahead and return the collection view. We're also going to go ahead and give it a background color. And most importantly, don't forget to register a cell to this collection view. Now I'm going to create the cell right down here just for the sake of time so we can get through this video quick. It's going to be called a image collection view cell, and it's going to basically be subclassing a UI collection view cell. Now inside of here, we're going to add a identifier that we shall use to register the cell to our collection view. And now we can actually go ahead and use that cell that we've got down below. So we're going to say collection view, go ahead and register a cell class. It's going to be the class we just created. And the identifier it's going to be registered for is going to be the class name dot identifier, which we have added. So now that we've got this collection view here, it's time to add it to our view hierarchy. So we're going to go ahead and say view. We're going to add a subview, collection view. I'm going to go ahead and assign the delegate to self, as well as the data source, so we can start plumbing in some data. Respectively, we need to conform to 2 protocols at minimum, which is going to be the delegate as well as the data source. I'm going to bring in a third here so we can make our layout look a little nicer, and that is the collection view delegate flow layout. Pretty long name here. And once we've brought that stuff in, we need some collection view functions to get all this set up. So the first thing we need is number of items. I'm just going to return 0 since we haven't plumbed in our images yet. The next thing we need is cell for item, I believe it's called. Here we're going to actually dequeue the cell and return it. So I'm going to go ahead and say guard let cell is going to be collection view. And we're going to say DQ a reusable cell with the same ID that we registered up above, which is going to be the identifier for index path. And the reason we did guard here is because we're going to try to cast the cell as the appropriate type. Otherwise, we'll crash the app with a fatal error. We'll return the cell there, and here we basically want to configure the cell with the appropriate image. So we don't have any images yet, and we still haven't set a frame to our collection view. So we're going to set a frame. So we're going to say view did layout subviews. We'll go ahead and make the frame of the collection view the entire size of the view bounds. And the next thing we're going to do is bring in our images. So we already know that we have 6 images. So I'm going to go ahead and say let image names. These image names are essentially going to be an array from 1 up until 6 inclusive. We're going to map this, and it's basically going to be image, and we're basically going to stick in $0, which will be 1 all the way up until 6, including 6. These are going to be our image names. And now, down on our collection view cell, we're going to go ahead and stick a image view in here. So we'll say image view is going to be an image view. And again, I'm only using the image view as an example. You can do this with any type of collection view cell, but generally image views are pretty popular candidates for this type of UI since it looks pretty nice. Gonna go ahead and make the content mode scale aspect fill, just like that. Now that we've got an image view, we want to add it to the cell's content view. So we're going to override the initializer. We're going to say super init, pass in the frame. We're going to add this to the content view. We'll say content view, add subview. We also need to bring in the required initializer. So let's go ahead and find that guy, bring it in. And finally, we also want to override super layout subviews. And let's see, we want the image view to take up the entirety of the cell. So we'll say the frame is going to be content view dot bounds. And we also need the very last piece in the cell, which is going to simply prepare it for reuse. In other words, we're simply going to nil out the image of this image view. So almost done with our setup process. I like including this in the video so you guys aren't, starting off at some weird half-built project. Now that we've got that image view there, we can say cell.imageview.image. And this guy here is going to be an image. And what is the name going to be? You guessed it. From our image names, we're simply going to get the nth value. So we'll say this is index path. We got to spell it correctly, of course. .row. Number of items is simply going to be image names dot count. And I believe that is the bulk of our setup code, if not all of it. Let's go ahead and hit Command B and Command R to build and run. I think I've got a simulator booted up here already. So your project should hopefully build pretty quickly. Looks like we have an error somewhere. So let me see what I screwed up here. So it looks like the background color, we made it a system. I think it's called system background. This should be background color, not background view. Let's go ahead and correct that and give it a run one more time. Hopefully no errors, and we should start seeing a collection view with our images in it. Now, the layout might look a little funky because we haven't exactly specified it. So while that's booting up, what I can go ahead and do here is I can give a minimum line and inter item spacing, and I can perhaps make it 2, which will give us a healthy amount of spacing between all of our elements. So I don't quite see it yet, and I think that's because our simulator is just being super slow. The other thing I'm going to do here while it is creating our loading our app, I should say, we're also going to give this an item size so everything is much larger. So here I'm going to say item size, and the function that we're looking for is on a collection view. So let's go ahead and look for item size, something along the lines of collection view size for item. I believe it is the first one that we have up here. And what are we going to return? We're going to return the size that each element should be. So the width is going to be view frame size dot width divided by 2. And I'm going to just subtract from this maybe like 4 to give some padding room. Same for the height. It's going to be a square cell. Let's see what we've screwed up here. And let's go ahead and let's fix it. So it looks like we've got an error somewhere here. Let me see where that error is popping up. Looks like it's up here. So we're saying this is vertical. It's because we forgot to put 2 there. Go ahead and give that a run once more. We should see nice big cells. All right, looking good. One thing that's weird is our image is bleeding over the edges. So we're going to say image view up here, clips to bounds, and we're going to make this true. All right, so I definitely know I went through that pretty quickly, but that's because collection views hopefully should make sense already. Let's talk about tapping and holding and seeing that really nice blurred out background in the context menu. It's actually insanely simple now. Back in the day with 3D Touch, it was a little tougher to do. There is something called context configuration. It is a part of the collection views functionality, and that's not what we want. We want to look for context configuration. So let's see. I believe that actually might be the one that we want. So context menu, if you start searching for collection view context configuration, you'll find a couple different ones that we can use. So there's configuration with the context, there's will perform, will display, and then there's context menu configuration for item. This is the one we're looking for. It's quite a long function, so pause and take a look at it if need be. Essentially, for each of the items, we need to create and return this configuration. So we're going to say config equals this configuration, and we're going to pass in a whole lot of stuff in here. So the first thing we're going to pass in is an ID. We're going to say nil. The next thing we want to pass in is a preview provider, which we're not going to deal with, pass in nil. And most importantly, the action provider. This is the one we really care about. So this action provider is simply going to allow us to take a action and return the menu that we want to provide. So this preview provider nil, we'll go ahead and get rid of that. And down here, I'm going to say return config. And in here, we're going to return a UI menu. And a UI menu takes in a couple things. The one that we care about is the one with a title, subtitle, identifier, and option. So we'll go ahead and select this one here. Let me just make sure. Yep, that's the correct one. Let me go ahead and line break all of this, and we'll keep all this stuff empty. We'll make the image nil. We're going to make the identifier here nil as well. Options is going to be UI menu.options.display inline. And children is really important. That's where we actually go and add in different menu items that are going to appear in our menu. Now the signature here might look a little weird. Why are we returning a UI menu in this closure? And that's because that is the signature that this UI context menu configuration expects. It's a little strange at first, but it definitely will make sense after we go ahead and give this a run and start adding some options into the menu. So we'll go ahead and run this. I'm going to go ahead and tap and hold on one of these cells, and let's make sure something happens. So right now, nothing's happening. One really subtle thing you can see, if you look really closely, you can see the image is kind of bouncing. And the reason nothing is happening is because we don't actually have any actions to toss into the children argument for this UI menu. So let's say we have an option to open something. It's going to be a UI action, and we want to pass in a title, an image, an ID, and a discoverability title. So the super long one here. Let's go ahead and fill these out. So open, maybe we go ahead and call this a UI image. We're going to use a system named image, and I'm going to go ahead and call this, I don't know, maybe a link. The next argument here for the identifier, we can pass in nil. The discoverability title, we can also go ahead and pass in nil. I don't think we want any particular attributes in this case. Let's see what's available to us in here. This is whether or not we want, it to be a red color destructive title or, just a standard one. So maybe we can say disabled. We'll see what that gives us. State is pretty important. We want this to be off, otherwise it'll change the way that the actual action looks. And this is the handler that will actually handle when the user taps on this option. So this one, in our case, maybe we'll go ahead and just print out tapped on open. All right, and now that we have this whole open action defined, we can toss it into that array of children that we're returning in our UI menu. Now if you go ahead and tap and hold on this, you'll see we get this open option that shows right below it with the respective link on the right hand side. So let's go ahead and take a look at a couple things. First and foremost, it's dulled out, and that's because it is disabled. You can take a look in here and you'll see that there is a destructive, there's also hidden. I don't think there's actually another initializer, and I don't think we per se need to pass this one in. I believe if we get rid of it, it might yell at us, but there is definitely, looks like it doesn't yell at us, look at that. So you definitely don't need to provide the particular state. If you just get rid of it, it's gonna show up like the normal expected way for it to show up. So light mode, dark mode, it looks really nice in both. And what I really like about this context menu is it does all the animations for you. So it brings the cell forward, looks like a tile. It also goes and adds the rounded corners. If you don't have it, you can see for us it's pointy. And if you tap and hold, it gives you the rounded corner. It gives you the images, and it looks really first party. Well, and that's because it honestly is. Apple did a lot of the heavy lifting here for us. So I'm gonna go ahead and give a title to this menu. We'll call it Actions. Image and ID, I'm not gonna go ahead and fill out. You guys also saw there is a way to supply a subtitle in here if you so choose to do so. But one thing I'm gonna go ahead and do is copy and paste some of these options just so we can see how other ones look together. So we're gonna say copy, or maybe we'll actually go ahead and say, let's call this one favorite. We'll go ahead and call this favorite. The image in this case will be a star, and maybe here we're gonna say tapped on favorites, and then we're going to have a search option here as well, with the title being search and the image being a magnifying glass. So let's go ahead and update our children's array. So we've got open. I'm going to toss in here to favorite as well as search. Now, one thing I want to bear in mind that I want to make sure is understood by everybody is you can change the options that are shown in the menu based on the index path, which should translate into the view model that's driving a cell. In other words, if we go ahead and run this, you're going to notice that we have the favorite option appearing for the cell. Now, what happens if I favorite something, right? In theory, I can't favorite it again. So we probably want to hold that piece of information, and we dynamically want to create a favorite or remove favorite option based on, whether or not it's a favorite already. So I'm going to do a very simple example. You should be using view models or proper architecture, but we're going to go ahead and create an array called favorites, which we're going to hold on to our favorites index positions. So when the user taps on favorite here, what I'm going to go ahead and do is we're going to say if self.favorites contains, and if we contain index path dot row, and bear in mind this is a parameter that is being passed in to this entire collection view context function. If it already contains it, we want to remove it. So in that case, we would say favorites remove all where. So let's see if I can find it. So we're going to say remove where. All right, here it is. And remove where all is, $0 is index path dot row. So every time you find that thing, remove it. And in the other case, all we want to do is simply say self.favorites, and we're going to append in here index path dot row. And just like that, what we have now achieved is instead of just showing favorite here, we can say if favorites contains the current position that we're looking at, so the index path dot row, once again, we can say the option here is to remove favorites. And in the other case, it's going to basically be to add favorites. So let's see why this is yelling at me, and we'll take a look at how to fix it. So it looks like we have an error here for a closure. It looks like we're already inside of a closure. So we're going to say self optional, and we're going to say this equals true since it's optional, and the reason it's yelling is because we're already inside of this closure here. So we're going to say weak self, just like that, to make sure we don't actually leak any memory. Go ahead and give that a run, and let's see if this works. So I'm going to tap and hold on this. So where you see favorite here, we'll select favorite. I'm going to tap and hold again, and now we see remove favorite. So we can remove it now. Tap it again, boom, favorite, so on and so forth. So point being, you should definitely dynamically be creating your your options in the context menu based on presumably some view models, some piece of data. In our case, it's a really naive array of integers, but hopefully that brings home the points. And that's kind of all I've got for you guys today. So a lot of setup work in the beginning. Hats off to all of you that stuck around while I went through it, but pretty important to understand how all these pieces fit together. I really like how this looks with images and image cells, especially because the background gets blurred. There's just something about the depth effect here, which really makes your UI pop and just look really polished. So let me know in the comments down below if you've used this before, if you plan on using it. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Don't forget to drop a like if you haven't done so already. Subscribe for more. Thanks for watching. I'll catch y'all on the next one.